Hello, 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 family. Going to give you a few minutes to join me. This is a makeup for missing yesterday, so I had to make up so we can get some time together. Let me see, make sure. Okay, hello, 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 hello. I think you can all see me now. Hello, Facebook family. I hope everybody is having a great weekend. Well, weekend just started, so I hope everybody is having a good Saturday and everything. So, I had on Wednesday, I had the kids. I had a career fair for the kids and had invited some colleagues of mine and one person who is related to one of the parents whose kids were on the career fair, and they shared some things with us. And one of the phrase that really stood out to me is how one of my colleagues described luck, and he said luck is where opportunity meets your plans. And I thought to myself, wow, that's pretty intriguing. Like, it's something that I have not really thought about before. So I just yesterday I was just I just started thinking about, okay, that's really something that we need to explore. And I was reflecting on my own story of my own life, and just started to reflect on how opportunity has been meeting my plans, and how sometimes opportunity presents itself, and because we don't have any plans, we miss out on that opportunity. So that's why I felt like that will be a really good makeup session for us to talk about what is luck? What does luck mean for us? And especially whether you are a Christian or you are not a Christian, like what does luck really mean? For the Christians, it made me think about this scripture here, where in Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11, it says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." So, when I was thinking about what he said when he said luck is where opportunity meets plans. So God has plans for us. And those plans are to prosper us and not to harm us. And so I started thinking like, okay, so if God has plans for us, and then we get an opportunity, and that opportunity aligns with the plans that God have for us, what role do we as individuals play in in the whole big picture? And earlier I shared with you that I'm going to be using the story of my mom, and my story and the story of my mom. And for you parents, I would like to encourage you that share the walks of your life with your children. Share the stories of the walks of your lives with your children, because um, children may not always tell you the impact that you make by sharing those stories, but it does really make an impact in their lives when you share those stories. And So the reason why I'm saying that is because my mom shared with me the story of her youth. And she shared with me about when she was in elementary school. So my mom only went to sixth grade in elementary school. And my mom is very, very smart. She's a very smart young lady. Well, she was young back then, but still, she went only up to sixth grade. And so she shared with me that when she was in sixth grade, her mom got sick and she lost the use of her arms. And they were seven in the family, and she was the youngest. And all her other siblings were already like in tertiary education, and it was like clear that they were smart and they were achieving. So when her mom lost the use of her arms, one of the siblings had to make the sacrifice and stay home to help mom, who was my grandma at the time. So my mom being the youngest, and my grandparents not wanting to pull the older ones out of the tertiary education that they were already at, they decided that the youngest will be the one that will be pulled out of school. So my mom was pulled out of school. And my mom, when she tells you this story, and that's one thing that I really admired about my mom, because she doesn't tell the story with bitterness towards her older siblings or towards her parents. She tells it with pride. Like she feels like of all the seven children, she was the one that her parents felt that she was good enough to help her mom. And that's how she looks at it. Like, and when my grandma got older, she also chose to come and live with my mom. And she lived with my mom until the end of her life. And my mom has always been very, very proud of the fact that she was able to take care of her mom. And from the time she was young to the time her mom passed away. But her not having had the higher education did not stop her from being an achiever in life. And so once she got older, her mom regained her ability to use her hands again, her arms and her hands again. And so my mom's cousin at the time, and I'm talking about, this is the story of the 60s. So so my mom, when she was pulled out of school, it was the story of the 50s. And then now she got older, and her cousin was working in South Africa at the time. And this was during the South African apartheid rule. That was when the minority white were in control of South Africa. And my mom's cousin, which is also very brave of her cousin, was working in South Africa during apartheid. A young lady, young Motswana lady, and working in South Africa by herself. So she talked to my mom and she said, my boss, she was just a shop assistant in South Africa. And she talked to my mom and she said, my boss is looking for somebody to come and work because he just lost one of the workers. And I've told him that I have a cousin and she can come with me and work. And my mom looked at her. My mom, by the way, my granddaddy was a preacher. So this is a daughter of a preacher about to go and live in South Africa by herself with another young lady. So my mom looked at her and said, "Hey, you better come and talk to your uncle. I don't know if he will say yes or he will say no." So my mom's cousin went and talked to granddaddy, and surprise, granddaddy said yes. So they packed and they went to South Africa. And all this time, I never knew that my mom, and this is the interesting part, My mom got on the train from Botswana to go to South Africa without a passport. Now, let that sink. This is a young Botswana lady. She's going to South Africa to go and work, and she does not have a passport. And when she finally shared with me the story that she went to South Africa without a passport, I looked at her. I was like, "Mom," she said, "Yeah," and she says, the Boers, and this is the white South Africans at that time, they were referred as Boers, and they were very cruel. Like, some of them were kind, of course. In any situation, you always have the spectrum of the cruel ones and the kind ones. She says the Boer conductor will be working in the train when they enter South Africa, and he will start saying, "Pass, pass, pass," and he will be checking everybody's passport. And my mom said, "He never would ask me for my pass." And my cousin will take out her pass. I would sit there because I didn't have a pass, and he never once asked me for a pass. He will just check my cousins and then move on. And again goes back to the fact that luck is where opportunity for me, and you can decide how you want to translate that for you depending on what your beliefs are. But for me, luck is where opportunity meets the plans that God has for you. And when those plans that God has for you, they also have to meet your own personal vision for your life. And when you have a vision, you are not going to sit still. You are going to work on it. And so my mom was working on the vision that she had for herself. And so God had the plans for her. And I believe that God's favor was so much upon her that when this guy was passing by and saying, "Pass, pass, pass," even though there was this young Motswana girl sitting there not showing her pass, God put that favor around my mom so that this Boer did not have a problem with this young Motswana lady not showing her pass. And so she worked in South Africa for 2 years. And she told me, she said, after 2 years, she came home and her parents told her that somebody said they wanted to marry her. And that was my dad. And so she said she had always liked my dad and liked my auntie. And they both so both their parents farmed in Mohonono. For those of you in Botswana that know where I grew up, and we will have a story about that later. But she said they had always, walked between Mulepule to Mohonono together as families. And so she said, my dad always made sure that he took care of my mom and her sisters and everything. So when because my dad was 10 years older than my mom. So when her parents told her that my dad's parents had come over to express that they are interested in mom getting married to daddy, she was very pleased. And she said yes. So now she had to give up her adventure in South Africa. But I will forever in my life be grateful that my mom shared this story with me. And that's why I say, parents, share your stories with your children. Because that story, when my mom shared with me, it was just a story. It was funny to me at the time, and it made me admire my mom. Like, in Botswana, if somebody works in South Africa, it's a big deal. I don't know if it still is, but for me growing up, it used to be like something that we admired a lot. Like, it showed one of the things that in Botswana we associate with South Africa is they are street. We see them as being street smart. So
I say them.
okay, you. So we see them as being street smart, and they also no, don't put that in your mouth. They also see us in Botswana as not being street smart. So for my mom in the 1960s, when she was like 17 years old.
Every person.
Okay,
I'm
go and see what Daddy's doing. Say bye bye.
Oh no.
Say bye bye. Okay, so for my mom at 17 years to have been brave enough to actually go to South Africa and work, that was brave. Like in my small mind, and I'm thinking this is she told me this story in the 80s and the 90s, and I was thinking I can't even imagine myself doing that. And for my mom to be brave enough to go, and she will show me her pictures, and I think I've shared some of her pictures on Facebook in South Africa. And for her to be brave enough to go to South Africa and be street smart enough to make it in South Africa, I was just like, it taught me that I should not be scared. And I asked her, I was like, Mom, like, where did you get the courage to go? And she told me, she said, because I knew God was with me. And that was a seed that my mom planted in me. And I always knew that whatever I want to do, as long as I believe that God is with me, I will always be, quote unquote, street smart enough to survive any situation. And so now to my story. So most of the people that come from Botswana would, and my friends on Facebook, they know that I always talk a lot about the fact that I did my elementary school or primary school in Mohonono. Mohonono is country. Like when you talk country, that's country. And like it's in Botswana we call it a farm like Moraka or Masimo. No, not Moraka, but Masimo, because that's where you farm. It's farmland. There's nothing else except farmland. And, I wasn't supposed to start school there. And again, God says, for I know plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. I was not supposed to start school there because my parents wanted me to go to the Molepola, which is in Botswana, we call it a big village. In the US, it will be called a small town. So they wanted me to start school there. But God had different plans for me. So my mom happened to leave me, and she had to go to the small town or to the village. She had to go to Molepolle on an emergency. And she left me with some of the people that used to help care for me. And what happened is the lady that was left with us, she had kids that were going to school. And she let me go to school with them. At the time, I was 6 years old. She let me go to school with them. And I impressed the teacher, the first grade teacher, and he decided that I should stay in his class. And to this day, I'm still grateful to him that he allowed me to stay in his class. And so And the principal of the school also agreed. And when my mom came back, and my mom was just she was horrified that I had started school. And she wanted to pull me out, but they convinced her to let me stay. And again, luck, when opportunity meets God's plan. So they allowed me to stay.
Just a blue.
Okay. Can you go over to Daddy? Go let Daddy blow it for you. Can you go and let Daddy blow it for you? Thank you, Tally. Close the door for me. Close the door for mommy. Thank you. So again, luck is where opportunity meets God's plan for your life. I cannot say at that time I had a plan for my life, because all I knew was I went to school with my friends that I played with after school. And this time I got an opportunity to actually go and see what they were doing. And for some reason, it was God's plan for me to go to school. And that's how I started my school. And my mom had to then deal with the fact that I had a real bad disability, which I still have to date. In Setswana, we call it seleni. Like, there are some letters of the alphabet that I can't pronounce. Back then, when I was younger, it was a whole lot of them. I could not pronounce them. Like, if I was in the US, I think I would have had an opportunity to work with speech therapists, and they would have helped me. But my speech therapist was my mom, and my younger brothers. They really tried to help me, because they could pronounce all the letters of the alphabet and I couldn't. And bless their hearts, they always wanted to help their big sister to overcome that. And so the Board of Education felt that I had to go to a special school that dealt with kids that were deaf, had speech issues. It was like a school for speech disabled at the time. That's what they called it. And so my mom had to convince them that I was not disabled, because according to my mom, and which I'm happy that that's how she felt, I was not disabled. And you all, the reason why I talk so much and I love talking, and I ended up in my career at work, I have to talk, despite my disability. So I ended up being able to pronounce all the other letters of the alphabet, learning how to pronounce them, but I cannot pronounce the letter R, like R for Richard. Here in the US, people think it's because I have an accent, but people that speak my own language know that even in my own language, I cannot pronounce that letter. But my mom, to build up my confidence, she had me talk a lot. She had me present a lot of things to her. And that's how I picked that presentation skill from a very young age, because of the encouragement that my mom had for me. And so, and that's why in my post I said, obstacles that are in your life, you can turn them into a stepping stone. Because, like, God says to us that He will never put anything in front of us that He knows that we cannot overcome. So when an obstacle is in front of you, it is meant for you to overcome it. But the devil would like you to believe that you cannot overcome it. And you just have to know that you can overcome anything. that comes into your life. And also for the parents, I would encourage you to teach your kids that they can overcome anything that comes into their life, because things that come into our life are to prepare us for our luck, to prepare us for when opportunity meets the plans that God has for us. And so that's how I started my school. It was just luck. It was just an opportunity that met God's plan for me. I truly feel that God had planned for me to go to school in Mohonono versus in Molepolole. And going forward, then I went to school, graduated my elementary, made real good grades, graduated my junior high, then went to Chile for my senior school, for my high school, and graduated, and then went to University of Botswana. Graduated from University of Botswana. After graduation, I couldn't get a job. I think my graduating class was the first class where the government stopped doing automatic placement of graduates. I couldn't get a job. And I was like, man, I was seeing my friends getting jobs, and I couldn't get a job. And I remember because my mom, again, she was very politically involved, and she was particularly involved with BDP, that's the ruling party back in Botswana. And she was always campaigning for our local member of parliament. So one day he came over, and this was Daniel Kwalakobe at the time. He came over to the house, and he's talking to me about joining the campaign. And I think that's when I really started to look at politicians with a very different lens. And I was thinking, this guy, I am sitting here, I am a graduate. I graduated with accounting and public administration from the University of Botswana. And I cannot find a job. And he's sitting here and wanting to use me to win his political campaign. And no empathy at all, like this graduate, like not talking to me about any policies that they're putting together to help alleviate the situation that graduates found them in, just happened to find themselves in at that time. And it was like, okay, if this is what politics is all about, then I do not want to be involved. And I told him, I said, with all due respect, I graduated 5 months ago, and me and a lot of my classmates cannot find jobs. So for you to even think that I would go out there and campaign for you, it's an insult to my level of intelligence. And he told my mom that I was throwing away my future. And at the time, he started to tell my mom that he thinks that I might be supporting BNF, which is an opposition party. And I wasn't even politically involved. Like, even during my years at university, I did get involved with the Student Representative Council. I was one of the members of that council, and but I never allowed myself to be politically aligned, because for me it was always about the welfare of Botswana, and I did not feel that either party really reflected my views on what was good for the welfare of Botswana. So I never got myself politically aligned. And so I just told my mom, and I told him, I told my mom, I'm like, don't let him make you think that I am involved with politics, because I am not. I just want them to do what's right for us, the youth. And then I just started looking for jobs. And I got a teaching opportunity, temporary teaching. I was told, well, you have to pack your bags and go to Masunga by next week. I had never been to that part of Botswana. And like I didn't even know where Masunga was. And there was no transport provided for me. I had to figure out how I get to Masunga. And by the way, I'm talking about I was 23, and for Botswana girl, that's still pretty naive at 23. Like, but I had to figure out how to get to Masunga Senior Secondary and figure out how I'll be ready to start schooling, to start teaching on next week, Monday. And I was told this on Wednesday. So I went home, gladly told my parents and my siblings that I got a job. I was going to be teaching business studies at Masunga Senior Secondary School. And they were like, well, my cousin was Mrs. Butale, and her husband's family came from Masunga. So they called her to ask her, how do I get to Masunga? And so she told us what buses to get, and when I get to Francistown, what bus to get to Masunga. I took my suitcase and the money that my mom and my dad had given me, and I got on the bus. And I went to Masunga. And Monday I was in class, Miss Tebe, teaching business studies. And I taught there for a year. And the following year, I was able to get a job as a human resources officer. And I started working for the government of Botswana. This job was very frustrating to me. The reason why it was frustrating to me is because, again, I'm all about opportunities for people. And I was assigned to be a desk officer or an HR officer for the Ministry of Health. And so I was dealing with these young Botswana that were coming from studying abroad. And, you know, for you at that time, I don't know about now, but for you at the time to go and study abroad, you have to have been like a real high achiever. And when I say abroad, I'm talking about they were going to Australia, they were going to UK, they were going to the US. Those were the three main destinations for doctors or anybody that wanted to be in the healthcare industry, except the nurses. The nurses were being trained in Botswana. So they had to have like real good grades for them to win the scholarship to go abroad. And they also had to maintain those good grades for them to be able to continue and graduate and finish their study. So I was working with that caliber of young people. They were my age, most of them, because we all graduated around the same age, the same time. And I had high respect for them. And to see them come back from abroad and they had to sit when there were open positions. So, and this is where it really got frustrating to me. So we need a physical therapist, for example, in Molepolole. We have this young person who just graduated with degree in physical therapy. There is an open position for them to go and fill this position, but they have to sit for 3, 4, 5, 6 months without a job because the HR officers, the file comes to you as a junior officer. I was a junior officer. So the file comes to me with a list of names of all the graduates. And I do their appointment letters. The appointment letter then goes to the senior HR officer who reviews my work to make sure that I had given them the right salary, I have given them the right post meaning they were stationed in these towns where they were supposed to be stationed, and just check my grammar or spelling or stuff like that. And then they will take it, approve it, pass it on to the principal officer who was supposed to sign it, put that signature in it. Once they've put that signature in it, a messenger is supposed to come and take it, put it in an envelope, and then send it. Then the person is supposed to start working. You would think that this process is a process that will take a week. And in my thinking, it was a process that should even take less than a week. But this process took like about 3 months. And I had these people that I respected and admired, that I know they were not smarter than me, because I know I'm smart. But the difference between me and them is, unlike me, they had worked hard. They had worked real hard to maintain their grades, and to make sure that they end up pursuing those careers. Whereas for me, I let my grades. I did not push as hard as I used to when I was younger. And I admired their tenacity. I admired their hard work. And to see them sitting there and getting frustrated was just something that I couldn't work with. So I knew I had to get out. And then again, what is luck? For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. I knew that I was not meant to sit in there and be frustrated by people not doing their job. So I decided that, okay, it was time for me to move, but I didn't know where to move to. And then as opportunity will have it, the government of Botswana was implementing an HR application, a software. And I started to really throw myself into it. And eventually, I got to be assigned to the side of the office that was working on the implementation of that software. And that's where I met my beloved boss, Richard Harriman. Shout out to you. And I started working with Richard. I was an employee of the government. He was a consultant from the UK. And Richard, well, I have to say he was impressed with my work and my tenacity. And so he advertised a position for a support services manager, and I applied for it. I don't know how he convinced Kate that they should hire me, but somehow they agreed that they should hire me. And that's how my career into IT got launched. Again, luck is when opportunity meets plans that God has for your life. I truly believe that that opportunity existed. But had it not been that God had plans for me to be in there, I would have been so comfortable with my work for the government as an HR officer. I would not have felt frustrated, because at the end of the day, I was getting my salary. Yes, people were not being like, people were not being hired at the right time. People were not being promoted as they deserved. But that could have just been something that does not bother me. But for some reason, it bothered me. And because it did, it made my being an HR officer not to be a comfortable thing for me, and it made me to start looking for other opportunities other than that. Because I tried to talk to my superiors, I tried to voice out my displeasure with how slow things were going, but all the time I was told this is how we do things and you cannot change them. And I realized that, you know what, I had two choices. They say if you can't beat them, join them. Or they say when you get to Rome, do what the Romans do. And I was like, I either get to the point where I'm so desensitized to what is going on and I do what the Romans do, or I get out of this situation. So I chose to get out of the situation. And that's how I joined Richard as his support services manager for Infinium. And I learned a lot during that time. But there was something that Richard was doing that really intrigued me and made me want to learn more about the work of IT. And that was he will have these meetings with the users of the software, and he will ask them what they liked about the software, what they didn't like about the software, try to learn the work they were doing. At the time, I didn't know what that work was called, but I just thought it was really interesting to sit in there and listen to people, understand their processes, and then take that and use it to improve how we were implementing the software. I thought that was like a very, very neat thing. So I started to attend those meetings with him, and I don't really think he understood why I insisted on attending those meetings with him, but it was because I wanted to learn the skills that the things that he was doing. And so he will let me come in and I will just sit there and take the notes for him and stuff. And I learned how he conducted the meetings and everything that he did. And then eventually I was like, Richard, you know what? I can do this. And but things were not going so well. After about like 2 years, I think it was becoming very obvious that the Infinium software was not being used. Like it was a great software, it was implemented and everything, but people were still using the paper files. And getting paid was something that became a frustrating thing. So I knew that, okay, again, when you start to come to trials and tribulations in your life, that is a stepping stone that God is using for you to step into his next plan for your life. So when things started to happen like that, I realized that, okay, it is time for me to step, just like I've always done in my life. So I looked at what were my options. And right at that time, the Chinese government had decided that they were going to build relationships with Botswana government, as they were doing with the rest of African countries. I saw the advertisement in Miri, the newspaper in Botswana. And they were looking for people to go and study engineering or computer science, master's degree. For Botswana, they were offering master's degree and doctorates. And at the time, I only had my bachelor's. So I was like, okay, so I graduated accounting and public administration and studied political science as well. But I had started working in IT, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to apply for masters in telecommunication and information systems. They said they wanted somebody with a background of computer science. But I decided to write a long essay about my experience with Infinium software and implementation of Infinium software and my contribution to all that. So I did that and I was like, okay, this is an opportunity again. And that's how, you guys, that's how I live my life. Like when I see an opportunity, I tell myself that it can either meet the plans that God has for me or it cannot. And if it doesn't meet the plans that God has for me, then it is not going to come through for me. But if it does, then it will come through for me. So I put my application with the Chinese government. I know I was fishing, like I knew, and for some reason, and I knew I should not try to apply for the universities because they told me that I had to be admitted by a university. And I told myself, okay, I'm going to avoid the universities that are in the big cities because I realized that most of the times, small things, small areas really my area. That's just like I started my elementary in a farmland. It was a small area, and that's significant to me because Mohonono versus Molepole. Why did God send me to Mohonono? So I realized that my winning areas are small. So instead of applying for universities in Beijing or universities in Shanghai or in Guangzhou, I went for Wuhan, which was not one of the big cities at the time. And so put my application in, and a month went by, 2 months went by, and I'm thinking, okay, that was not God's plans for me. That month, I received a phone call, and it's a number that I don't know. But back then in Botswana, it was very rare for strangers to just call you unless they really had business with you. So I answered my cell phone, and it was the Chinese education attaché. And he said, Lion? And I said, yes, who is this? He said, it's Mr. Lee from the Chinese embassy. And I was with my friend Dudu. I don't know if I think she still remembers. So I was so excited. I took the phone and I put my hand over so that he doesn't hear me. And I said, Dudu, it's the Chinese embassy. And she's like, talk to them. And I said, yes, did I get the scholarship? And he said, yes, you did. Again, I put my hand on it, and me and Dudu look at each other and we screamed. And I said, oh, thank you. What do I need to do? And he told me what I needed to do. And the next thing I know it, in 2 weeks, I was in the plane going to China, going to a place called Wuhan. I had never heard about that. Landed in Beijing, changed planes, got in the plane to go to Wuhan. Your girl here was expecting that when I get to Wuhan, there will be a car there because I had been in touch with the university and everything. They knew when I was coming. I expected that there will be a car there to pick me up. I get to the airport, nobody's picking me up. I waited. I tried to talk to the people at the airport. Nobody understands English. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, is this real? Like, I had no way to even call back Botswana and say, I'm here, I'm stranded. And it dawns in me, like, what if this is not real? Like, I just did what Laone does, like an opportunity, and I stepped into it. And thank God it was not the era of human trafficking. So you all out there who are listening to me, when you take those opportunities and you take that leap of faith, we are living in a different era. We're living in an era of human trafficking and all that stuff. So be smart about your choices at the same time, but don't be over smart that you miss out when your opportunities are meeting the plans that God has for you. So I'm sitting there, and then after about 2 hours, one Chinese guy steps up to me and he says, hello. And I looked at him, I'm like, you speak English? He said, yes, but my English, not good. I jumped up and down. I grabbed that Chinese guy. I think I scared him and I hugged him so tight. So I showed him the address and the phone number of where I needed to go. because I had the address of the university and the phone number. So he called the university for me because the phones, there were phones there, but first of all, they were pay phones, and I had to have Chinese coins. I only had dollars and dollars. And the phones were in Chinese, so I didn't even know how to operate the phone. So he called for me, he made the call for me, and the university answered and they apologized. They were supposed to have sent a car for me, and they somebody did not do their job and they forgot. And I wasn't angry. I was cool. Like at least now I know it's real. Like I'm not lost in here. And so the guy put me in a taxi and told the taxi driver that the university will pay him when he gets there. So the taxi driver took me over, and that was the story of my beginning with my master's degree. It was a very tough journey. So I was changing measures. And not only was I changing measures, I was also changing measures and getting instructions in Chinese. So I had to learn Chinese. And I thank God for the people that He put along my path that helped me a lot. And you all know that I am very vocal, and I challenge authority. And if things are not going right, I'm going to speak up. And I did that in China. Yes, I went after our foreign student leadership and complained about our living standards. And they listened to me. And this is the thing, though. It was after the SARS outbreak, and they called a meeting with the foreign students, and they wanted us to express ourselves. What I didn't understand was that when Chinese give you an opportunity to express yourself, it's superficial. They don't really expect you to express yourself. So when they told me to express myself, they told us to express ourselves. Nobody stood up, and I stood up and I told them that our living conditions were deplorable. We will get sick from SARS because of the conditions that we are living in, using open ablution. Like if somebody was in the stall next to yours and they did number two, you will see it flash and pass by you. So I told them, I was like, that's not the way we should be living. And so I could see that, I could tell by the time I finished talking to them that it had hit home for them. And within a month, we moved to a hotel and they started renovating our buildings. But after we moved back to the building, within 3 months, my professor told me that he could not be my professor anymore. And mind you, it was a struggle for me because, like I say, I had changed measures, and now I had to complete my master's in Chinese, and I just couldn't. Like most of my classmates were people that did their undergraduates in China. So it was not like they were learning Chinese. They had been learning for 5 years with the medium of instruction being Chinese. And for me, it was like 1 year, and I had to be able to do everything that my colleagues now were like 6 years in China. I had to do everything completed, but they were so the foreign student office at the time before I made them mad. They were kind to me because they let me they assigned me the only professor that could speak English. That's who they assigned to me. But after I made them mad, um, they he told me he can't be my professor anymore. And I was like, man, I'm doomed. So I had to think first, what do I do? And so contacted the embassy of Botswana, told them what just happened with me. And one of my colleagues at the time, he was also with me. And I think for my professor, because he was our professor both, but he had to suffer the consequences so that it was not questionable why they were only dropping me, so they dropped both of us. So we decided to transfer to another university where they had more lecturers that lectured in English. And that's how I managed to graduate. And at the end of graduation, we had an interview with Huawei. And during the interview, the lady at Huawei, I told them, because by then I knew what I wanted to do with my career. And I had wanted to become a business analyst because after studying, I realized that the work that me and Richard were doing, that's called business analysis. So I decided that, okay, I wanted to go into that after my graduation. And so when I interviewed with Huawei, I told them, yeah, that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a business analyst. And they said, well, we have open opportunities, but we don't think you are a good fit. If we hire you for Huawei, we will hire you to be an administrator. And I said, no, I don't want to be an administrator. I want to be a business analyst. And they said, well, then we won't hire you. I said, okay. And I told myself, nobody is allowed to ever limit me. And because nobody knows the plans that God has for me. And my God has told me that He has plans to prosper me and not to harm me. So if you are telling me that something that I want to go after is something that you don't think I'm fit for, and I know I'm fit for it. I know I've done it without training. And now I have training, and you tell me I cannot do it, like, no. So I turned down the offer to be the administrator because that was not what I wanted to do. And I met James online. That's another story I will tell you all. And that's again the story of my life, or opportunity meeting the plans that God had for me. And so I moved back to Botswana for a little bit after my graduation, took a job as a senior business analyst, did very well, moved to the US, took a job again as a business analyst, did very well. And that to me was proof that what Huawei people told me, that I cannot be a business analyst, was not true. And that I am good enough to follow my passion of business analysis. And that's what I do even up to today. And so what I just want to share with you guys, there are so many things that in my life have proved to me that luck is really when opportunity meets the plans that God has for you. Even during this time of COVID-19, I have seen luck play out for me. And again, luck to me is not how the dictionary explains to me. I love how my boss explained it, is when opportunity meets plan. And for me, it's when opportunity meets God's plan for my life. Luck is when God has allowed trials and tribulations to be my stepping stone to the next level of elevation. So during this time of COVID-19, and during and through so many things in my life that have happened, God has put trials and tribulations to be my stepping stones into my luck. And my luck is where opportunity meets God's plans for me. And I want to leave you with this to say, I don't know, whatever you're going through, I don't know what your trials and what your tribulations are, but I want you in your state, in your situation right now, to see those trials and tribulations as your stepping stone, as the door that is being opened for your luck, and luck being where opportunity meets the plans that God has for you. I don't want you to wallow in your sorrow because of your trials and tribulations. I want you to step and get yourself elevated into letting your opportunity meet the plans that God has for you. And that's all that I wanted to share with you. Mrs. LJT apologizes for not being able to come on yesterday, but it was because I was out there pursuing the opportunities that are unraveling with the plans that God has for me and James right now as we speak. Stay blessed, stay focused, understand your luck, step into your elevated place. Bye. I do not see any comments. I don't know if I'm not having them over here, but I am not seeing any comments. I'm not seeing any questions. So if there are any, I will go through the comments and answer them. And but that's all that I had, and that's all that was in my heart to share with you guys. I love you. I hope God continues to bless you all, and we will talk again soon. You're welcome, Kamuso. All right. Bye bye.